It's time for this week's episode of Brandon Sports Talk, featuring in-depth interviews from those who are trending in the world of athletics. And now, here's the host of Brandon Sports Talk, Brandon Pate.
Welcome back to Brandon Sports Talk. In today's episode, I have the privilege to interview Adeline Gray, a U.S. wrestler. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. Thank you so much for having me.
Can you talk about how you knew that you wanted to compete in being a U.S. wrestler?
Yeah, so I started wrestling when I was about 6 years old, so I was pretty young. And then I did women's wrestling. Actually wasn't in the Olympics at the time, but when I got into high school, they put women's wrestling into the Olympics. And that was kind of the first time that I realized that you could do professional sports kind of beyond college. And I just kind of got put on the Olympic path. And that dream kind of developed as I was training and as I got involved with more Olympic level sports. And so it wasn't something that I've been dreaming about since 6. I thought I was going to play college soccer and then go on and kind of start my life. And now I'm 30 years old and I've traveled the world and been able to experience so many wonderful things because of wrestling.
Can you talk about, of course, competing in club wrestling in New York versus going like the college route and then going into the Olympics?
So I was born and raised in Denver, Colorado. So my junior level wrestling was in Denver at Bear Creek High School Junior League program. And then I was sponsored by the New York Athletic Club when I got into high school. And so they essentially allowed me to be able to travel around and go to these different tournaments and nationals and these different events essentially to get on the path to going to the Olympics. So there's a lot of steps to that point. I made my first junior world team around 16 or 17. And just that starting point really put me on a good trajectory to go on to make multiple Olympic teams.
How did it feel to be a 5-time world champ?
It's incredible to be a 5-time world champ, to stand on the top of the podium and have your flag risen and know that you're the best in the world at that moment is just, there's no other like feeling like it. There's not many people that get to truly say that they're the best at something, and to show up on that day and just battle and be able to come out on top is really a special moment. And to win for my country and just to win for myself, knowing that all that hard work, accumulates to a W is pretty awesome.
What was it like in 2016 and 2020 going to the Olympics?
It's a real honor to represent your country at the Olympics, and Team USA has such a dominant performance at the Olympics that it's special to be on that team. I have some friends who go and compete for other countries or other teammates that are part of their delegations. And of course, it's an amazing accomplishment just to become an Olympian, but there's something truly special about being a Team USA Olympian. And I really feel that honor when I'm wearing that singlet and out there with my teammates. And the Paralympics are coming up in just a couple of weeks. And so it's pretty special to kind of like get to have that team camaraderie with everyone.
How did it feel to put on the singlet for the first time and have Team USA on the front?
I think I was in high school the first time I got to wear a singlet that said Team USA and had my name on it. And I remember it came with a pair of brand new running shoes. And I looked at I have 3 younger sisters, and I looked at my sisters and my parents. I was like, what am I doing right that I'm getting sent free shoes? Like, why is that? Like, what did I do correct? And it was special. And to go out there and just understand that you're doing this not just for yourself, but you're doing this for your team and your parents and that name that's on the back of your singlet, and then also your country. It's really special to know that there's a different intrinsic motivation that kind of has to happen, because for a lot of these countries, the Olympics and the ability to compete on an elite stage is it, like they have no other options. They don't have an education to fall back on. They don't really have opportunities to do other things. And so sport is kind of like their way out. And for a lot of Americans, that's not true. Like I could take many different paths and I feel like I would be successful. And so to be able to know that I chose this path and I've been able to be so dominant it's truly a different motivator.
Can you talk about, of course, your amazing career and what you've accomplished?
Yeah, so I've had a lot of medals, which has been great. I've been pretty dominant on my world stage. I won a junior world championships in 2008, and then I went on to make 8 world and Olympic teams. And so I'm a 5-time world champion, a 2-time bronze medalist, and now an Olympic silver medalist, which is my first Olympic medal, which is exciting. I was an Olympic alternate in 2012. I took 7th in the Olympics in 2016. And then I obviously came home with silver from the Tokyo Olympics, which is not what I went for. I definitely was in the finals, and being in Olympic finals is really special and would have loved to come home with gold. But I just had a little bit of an off day that day, but still, it was an amazing experience to be able to be in an Olympic final, just know that I am among the best in the world, and it's a special moment.
Of course, going back to winning the silver medal, what was that feeling like?
It was a lot of relief, honestly. I mean, just with the pandemic and COVID and not knowing if we were going to have the Olympics, and then not knowing if I could go another year. I mean, there were a lot of decisions that had to be made in that pandemic extra year kind of conversation. And so it was challenging. And so to know that we were in Tokyo, and at any moment, if we tested positive, they could just send us home to do all this work and all this effort to lead up to like just them sending us home on a plane was very soul crushing. Like, I was so scared that we were going to have someone not be able to compete, and none of that happened. And it was all just my imagination, and like, I think a reasonable fear, but still just a fear that didn't come to fruition, thankfully. And when I was up there on the stage, I was like, oh, I'm just so glad we made it. I'm so glad that we had the opportunity to compete. And for women's sports, this is the highlight. There's not very many professional leagues in the world for women. And so the Olympics is really where we get to shine and where we dedicate most of our energy and effort into. And so when the pandemic shut down and some of the men's professional leagues continued on, it really hurt women sports the most to not be able to do our main events and have the opportunity to go to tournaments and train with other international partners. And that's how I make a living, is by winning tournaments. So I went a year and a half without any tournaments, and so it's definitely damaging for a lot of resources that we had leading up to the Olympics.
Can you talk about the game day routine and rituals that you had during the Olympics?
My game day routine is the same for World Championships and the Olympics. The schedule's a little bit different on Olympic Day, but I won't get into that. Just that it starts a little bit later and ends a little bit earlier. It's a smaller tournament, so you kind of know what time you're going to be wrestling. So the lead up on how you warm up is different. But I wake up in the morning, I check my weight, I go and weigh in, I have a rehydration routine, and then I just stay at the venue after weigh-ins, and then we put our stuff on. We do a very intense warm up. What most people would consider their hardest workout of the week is what I do for warm up. And then we change our clothes and kind of prep and rehydrate. So I have water and applesauce and some gummies, and then do a little rewarm right before we go out onto the mat. And there's like a 15-minute period where you're in like the shoot is what we call it. So it's like staging, and then they wait to like bring you out for TV. And that only really happens at World Championships and Olympics. So it's not something you get much practice with, but that's definitely something that's different, and you have to kind of get used to the cadence of that. And then you walk out on the mat, you wrestle, hopefully you get your hand raised and you win. And then I exit the mat and do a cool down. I get some rehydration in me, change my singlet if I need to. And then you do a rewarm before the next match. And the first day of the Olympics, you have 3 matches if you keep winning. And then the second day you have 1 for the finals. And so it was a great day that I had that first day. I won all 3 of my matches and put myself in the Olympic final, and it seemed pretty seamless.
What was this Olympics like versus previous Olympics?
This Olympics, because of COVID, had a lot of restrictions. There was a lot of paperwork and a lot of just kind of like oversight of what we were doing and what we were allowed to do. And so it was, we didn't really get to go, like I didn't go to opening ceremonies. I wasn't allowed to go to the village until after my competition. There was like multiple things that were tight. And so it was kind of a double-edged sword. One of the good things was I was able to go to see all of my teammates' events, which typically when you have some friends and other events, you end up having to skip a few of the wrestling days. And Team USA wrestling brought home 9 Olympic medals in women's and men's freestyle and together. And it was so fun to be a part of that delegation and be part of that number too. You know, like nine world medals haven't happened, or Olympic medals haven't happened since the 80s. And so this was the most dominant team that we've had by far. And there's just so many talented athletes and incredible stories that it was fun to be a fan and to be in the stands and just be excited for the hard work and effort that Team USA has been putting in and having it reap the benefits of walking home with 9 medals.
What are some of your favorite memories and moments from this previous Olympics and Olympics in the past?
So the previous Olympics in 2016, I went 1-1. So I won my first match and I lost my second. And because I lost my second match, that woman had to make it to the final and she ended up not making it to the final. And so I was out of the tournament. So I was in amazing shape. I just had one bad match, lost by 1 point. And we went out to like Copacabana Beach area and we were walking along and there was these teenage boys playing soccer. And I was with my husband and a couple of my best friends and my sisters. And we asked, it was a group of like probably 5 women and 2 men. And we walked over to the teenage boys and we were like, hey, can we play soccer with you? And they were like, yeah, we're looking for someone to play against. And they kind of saw a group of young women and, you know, a couple guys, and they're like these fit in shape teenage boys. But I just really felt the openness and willingness to allow women to compete. You know, like some of these guys were faster than us and they didn't know I was an Olympic athlete. And I went in there and scored like 4 goals, and my sister played D2 soccer and D1 soccer, the other one did. And so they went in and scored 5 goals each. So we ended up beating them like 10-4 or something like that. But it was just really fun to go out there and feel athletic and feel accepted and know that the world is changing when it comes to embracing women in sports. And it was just a really special moment. Like it's funny because people always ask me about my Olympic experience in 2016 and they're like, oh, an Olympic failure, like you failed at the Olympics. I'm like, I had one of the best days of my life. Like I got a pin at the Olympics. I became an Olympian, once an Olympian, always an Olympian, forever and always. And I got to enjoy being athletic and strong and dynamic and fast. And I get to feel that on a beach in Rio with, you know, surrounded by my friends and family against a group of young boys who, if I would have written down on paper, I would have said would have never allowed me the opportunity to play. And I think it just shows that there's a changing landscape with accepting and embracing women in sport. And that moment did that for me. And I really enjoyed it. And then this last Olympics, there was no fans allowed and no friends and family. But my sister got to come with me as my training partner. And I was just overjoyed that I got to have her. She wrestled in high school and then played soccer in college. And then she's been a wrestling coach for the last few years. And my weight class is the highest weight division. And so there's not a lot of women who are bigger than me, but internationally, the women are typically a little bigger than I am. And so when my sister was able to be a little bit bigger than me and be my training partner and kind of be there to just help keep me happy. And through the entire pandemic, she lived with me and helped me train and helped motivate me and helped just keep me focused. It was so special to have her there. She had never been to Tokyo, so I got to show her all the food, and we didn't really get to see anything because we were on lockdown in Tokyo, but still we got to experience enough of the culture that we know we want to go back. And it was really a special thing when you get to experience travel moments and highlight moments in your life that with people who are going to be in your life for a very long time. It makes those moments so much more special. It makes them deeper, and it's a shared experience that you have with people around you. And I think that's one of the beautiful things about sports, is that it can bring people together and have lifelong memories that really can light up your lives.
That's so amazing. How did it feel the first time you were in the Olympics and had the Olympics under your last name?
The first time was scary. I remember leading up to the 2016 Olympics, I was like, oh, I'm an Olympian, like right after Olympic trials. And the Olympic committee or the USOPC was like, oh, you can't call yourself an Olympian until you actually step on the mat and compete at the Olympics. And I'm like, oh my gosh, like, why are you robbing me of this experience of like embracing this? Because when you get new titles and you have new things that happen to you, I need time to like absorb that, you know, I need time to really add the name Olympian Adeline Gray to my resume. I need to feel that word and allow it to be there. And so on the Olympic day, it almost became this like moment where I'm like, oh my gosh, don't misstep. And I was walking on eggshells because I was scared that they were going to take that title away from me if I tripped and fell on the way into the venue and wasn't allowed to compete. And just to have that fear, I think really hindered me. And I kind of want to change that for the USOPC. I understand why they do it because, injuries do happen in sports and things, weight issues happen in my sport and they have to throw in somebody else. And then that person is technically the Olympian. But I really feel like they should retract the statement. Like once you qualify for that Olympic team, I think it would help athletes to be able to really feel and understand that they're a part of this Olympic spirit and a part of this Olympic team before they actually just step on the mat. Because I feel like it was a little more than I wanted it to be. It was overwhelming to that point. And I felt like that almost became somewhat of the goal instead of the goal of going out there and winning on that day.
What advice would you give future and current people looking to compete in the Olympics for the first time or for multiple times?
I think my advice to people is go out and try different things. Like I definitely think you should find a sport that speaks to you and is really the right fit for you. And then just finding the right community and support system around you. I mean, I think that's something that I've been so blessed with is that my success has allowed me to kind of handpick the people in my world. And it's been such a joy to be able to know that they're here for me, that they're not just, they don't just support me and love me if I win or lose, but they're here to make sure that I can be the best on that day. And if you can build that support system and that team around you, it can help you not just in your sports career, but your actual life too. Like I believe I've built the skills to know who makes me feel good and who, allows me to be the best version of myself on a day-to-day basis. And that's a really important tool that we can use, that we all can use, for mental health, for just lifelong health, for allowing ourselves to be happy and healthy in our lives long term. It's a vital skill, and you can practice that through your Olympic journey.
That's great advice. Where can my listeners find you at on social media?
So I would love if everyone followed me. Instagram is where I post the most. And I think my pictures are pretty fun, but it's at Adeline Gray, just my name. And if you Google Gray Wrestling or Adeline Gray Wrestling, my Instagram and Twitter pop up. But yeah, it's just my name, Adeline Gray, and follow me on any of the social medias that you guys like. I think I'm on most of them.
Thank you again, Adeline Gray, for your interview, and best of luck in your future as the Olympian for the U.S. Wrestling.
Thank you, Brandon. And I actually have the World Championships coming up in October in Norway. So we're gearing up for a major event right away. So it's going to be pretty fun. So do give that a follow, and you can check out the continuation of this year.
Will do. Thank you again, Adeline Gray, for your interview, and best of luck in your future.
Thank you.
You can find Brandon Sports Talk on Facebook at Brandon Sports Talk, Instagram at Brandon Sports Talk, Twitter at Talk_Brandon, and you can find me on YouTube at Brandon Sports Talk. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Thank you again, Adeline Gray, for your interview, and best of luck.
Thank you.
You've been watching Brandon Sports Talk. Please feel free to like, share, and subscribe to Brandon Sports Talk on social media and on YouTube.